The next Christopher Nolan movie is now here with the Odyssey, but was it as good as everybody is expecting it to be? Well,
no one could stand between me and home. Not even the gods.
keep us free! I would say yes. The Odyssey is really good. It's not necessarily my favorite when it comes to really anything. It's not my favorite of the year. It's not my favorite Nolan movie. Admittedly, though, big Batman fan, so Dark Knight will probably always be my favorite Nolan movie. but that doesn't stop it from being. That doesn't mean that it's not really good. So let's just talk about it a little bit here. So. Let's just start off with what makes this movie so epic, because there's a lot of greatness in this movie, especially because, well, it is really cool how so much of this is practical. Like, a lot of the really epic stuff about this movie comes from the behind the scenes stuff with how they had to shoot different things and how they kept it as practical as possible. It's also very interesting that this is the first ever movie shot entirely with 70mm IMAX cameras, which added a whole different kind of challenge to this, to shooting this movie. And also, in case you're wondering, I have seen this once. I plan on seeing it again. My first round was actually in Dolby, but I do have tickets secured for a round 2 in IMAX 70mm, which will be my first IMAX 70mm. I've seen movies in IMAX, the 35mm, or the normal IMAX, or the IMAX, whatever you want to call it. I've never seen a movie in 70mm. I will be seeing it in 70mm for the first time. It will be my second round of Odyssey. I couldn't get tickets for it opening night. So, and also, a 70mm is a very far drive for me, because there is none very close by. But I'm making the trip. It is multiple weeks later. Like, it will be at post Spider-Man and everything, but I will be making the trip. I don't know if I'm going to see it sometime in between there. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll see. But yeah, so it is interesting that this is the first movie shot entirely with IMAX cameras, because we've had sequences shot, but not an entire movie, so that's interesting as well. But then diving more into it, like the cinematography is still, like, it looks incredible. Like, there's a lot of great looking shots in this movie. That's just like really cool to see, even with the Dolby screen. I can't wait to see what they look like in that 70mm IMAX. The performances here are incredible. Everybody is great in this movie. Matt Damon, I think, is just great. He is amazing as Odysseus. Anne Hathaway does an amazing job as well. And Tom Holland, I think, might be a standout for me personally. And the reason for that is because, obviously, to me, as a huge Marvel fan, when I see Tom Holland, when I think of Tom Holland, I think Spider-Man. I mean, look at the game I'm playing right now. And so far, I haven't seen a whole lot of other stuff he's in, but every time I can't help but hear or see Spider-Man. Whether it's his voice in, like, Spies in Disguise or Onward, or even, like, Uncharted, I couldn't help but see just a more arrogant version of Peter Parker. In this movie, I think he does such an amazing job that it did take a little bit. I did see Peter Parker for the little bit of this movie, but once we really got full force into the story, I didn't see Peter Parker. I saw, I'm blanking on the character's name at this point, but you know what I mean, Odysseus' son. So that was epic. Robert Pattinson also delivers an amazing performance here. Batman himself. So everybody, the entire cast here is just great. And then when we get onto the actual story itself, I think the actual story is very engaging. I don't know very much about the story of the Odyssey, or even about Greek mythology in general, to be honest with you. I know some basics from Marvel and DC, really, is where most of it comes from, but also, like, a little bit of Percy Jackson here, a little bit of this over here, a little bit of, like, these different pop culture things, but I don't know a whole lot about it. And, like, the book, The Odyssey, I actually have not read. I actually started listening to the audiobook, but I haven't finished it. But I don't know a whole lot, so a lot of the story for me was kind of new. Like, I knew about the Trojan War and stuff like that, and, like, I knew that story or myth or whatever. So I went into this not knowing very little about the story, and the story is very engaging. However, I do think it takes a bit for me to get engaged into the story, which we'll get to when we get to more negatives. But once we really get full force into our story, it is very engaging. And even with this 3-hour runtime, well, it's not quite 3 hours, okay, but for like after we get into it, it is engaging. Even though the first couple minutes I don't think it's very engaging, but once we get into it, it kicks up. For me personally, when we get to the Cyclops scene is when it started picking up for me. Everything before that, I was kind of like, well, it already feels like it's been an hour and it's been like 20 minutes. But once we get to that Cyclops scene and then onward, it is just engaging. And speaking of, like, there's just so many amazing sequences in this movie that are one of the reasons why it is so engaging. That Cyclops scene is engaging and borderline scary at times, and partially because you're just like at your seat, heart pounding, like, oh my goodness, how are these characters gonna make it out of this? The scale of the Cyclops is insane, and it's just crazy. And then there's a bunch of other sequences also later. There's another sequences that I'll just say involves pigs, which is terrifying but also kind of like very interesting, also just again from a filmmaking point of view and stuff like that. But it is terrifying and like heart pounding. But then there's also like a conversation that happens within that scene as well, which is still engaging with this conversation between these two characters, so Odysseus and another character, which was really, like I said, engaging. And then there's a bunch of other scenes too, like every time they're on a boat, it to me is incredible. And like with like the waves crashing, especially there's a scene later where they're on the boat and a heavy thunderstorm hits, and like the lightning's flashing and the thunder is booming and the waves are crashing, and all of that put together, and the visuals of it, and being in Dolby with my sheet shaking, I can't talk, wow, I don't know English apparently, my seat shaking, there we go, I finally said the words, was just like so incredible. That was all great. Oh, the little CGI that was used in this movie also looks great. I did write that down. Like, nothing looks fake in this movie, and probably because 99% of it was real. But you know, like that wasn't real Cyclops. They didn't find the Cyclops in or did they? I mean, they just haven't told us. Maybe. But yeah, like I said, all of that was just like there's just so many different like sequences in this movie that are great. The final battle, I guess I'll put it, is like also very awesome. Like there's some moments I'm just like, oh yes, it is so cool. However, I'm not totally in love with this movie again on single viewing. On rewatch, especially in the format that's meant to be seen in, I might love it even more. But back to what I briefly mentioned earlier, I do think the movie starts slow. I found that I was kind of like getting antsy in my seat already with this first 20, 30, 40 minutes of the movie. And I was like, oh man, it feels like it's been an hour. Are we halfway through this movie already? No, we're like 15 minutes into the movie. So I think that is I think there's a bit of a pacing issue there. I don't think the movie needs to be 2 hours to 55 minutes. Is that the actual runtime? I don't know, close to 3 hours. I think we could have shortened it up a bit, make this run a bit quicker. But like I said, that's on one watch. Maybe on rewatch it will move quicker. But that's how I felt about, especially with the beginning. I think similarly to Oppenheimer, the movie I feel like sometimes likes to jump back and forth a bit too much. Where I feel like we're like over here, and then we're 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 back over here, and then we're back over here, and now we're over here telling a story about what happened over here. And now we're over here telling a story about what happened over here. I'm just like, okay, can we calm that down a bit, please? I just want to take a second. Let's calm down. I feel like to me, I think that might just be a me thing also. Like I don't think I've heard anybody complain too much about that with the Odyssey. I think Oppenheimer does it a bit too much for my liking as well, which again, I don't hear many people talk about that with Oppenheimer. So maybe this is just a me thing. And I think it's also a Nolan thing too, from what I remember, from what I've seen of him. I haven't seen everything Nolan yet, I'll confess. But there is a lot of I think there's a lot of jumping around, and I kind of wish we slowed down a bit on that. But so to me it felt like a little bit messy, I guess is the best way to describe it. But again, that might just be me thing. When you go see the movie, you might not be thinking, you might be like, wow, you're crazy, I followed along perfectly. But to me, it was like, okay, we're constantly jumping around. Can we slow down between different timelines, different times and different places? Can we slow down a bit so I can catch up and figure out what's going on? But again, that could just be a me thing. I don't know. And also something that I've noticed, but it might not be an issue, is that it is a little repetitive. Where like a big part of the story is like Odysseus and his crew go to this island, trouble happens, they retreat. They go to this island, trouble happens, they retreat. They go to this island, trouble happens, and they retreat. So that feels a bit repetitive. It's like, oh, so we're doing this again, and now we're doing this again. But I also feel like I shouldn't really complain, because every time that happens, we get an awesome sequence. Because, like, this isn't spoilers, you see all this in the trailers and posters, but, like, they go to an island, Cyclops, they gotta get out of there. They go to an island, giants, they gotta get out of there. They go to an island, something else happens, they gotta get out of there. So, while it is a little bit repetitive, like, we're doing this again, but I also, like I said, I feel like I can't complain, because each time that happens, we get an awesome sequence. So, I feel like that's still something I should point out, because, like I said, for some people it might get like a bit like, why are we doing this, especially because it's a really long movie. But to me, I still enjoyed it, but I noticed that, like, we're doing this again, okay. But then, you know, Christopher Nolan delivers an awesome sequence, so probably shouldn't complain. But yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed this movie. I felt, so it's just something I want to point out, like, well, two things. So one, I feel like I did touch upon it a little bit. I feel like Nolan does incorporate some horror into some of the scenes here, which I think is really well done, and it was very unnerving, and like and it got my heart pumping. I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about what I'm witnessing on screen right now. So, but it was like in a good way, because that's how it's supposed to be, if you know what I mean. Like, yeah, you're supposed to be unsettled, unnerved, feeling uneasy, and it does such a great job at doing that. And also, something I would just want to talk about a little bit is the R rating. Because this movie is rated R, but I feel like it's like a very tame rated R. Now, I know I just came off of saying there are some horror-like sequences that leave you uneasy, but also I'm pretty sure you could get away with that in a PG-13 movie. A hard PG-13, but still PG-13. I didn't mean to shoot that web. Because I just noticed that, like, there's only certain things, like, there's just enough to push it to R rating, but it's also not a lot, where I think if they just would have toned it down a bit and got PG-13 rating, maybe they should have done that, and or increased the violence, let there be a bit more, you know, we got our sword fights, maybe let those be a bit more violent than they were. So it's just something interesting I felt like I should point out. It's just like, where it's like, because I know there's also a bunch of teenagers who are interested in this as well. I feel like it depends on the person, obviously. I don't want to say too much like, yeah, you should take them, no, you shouldn't take them, because it all depends on the person. But I will say, like, it's a pretty tame R rating, and there's only, like, I think there's only like 3 F-bombs, and the violent, like, there's some moments that are very unsettling, but you could probably go with that in a PG-13. And there is some intense violence, but it doesn't happen too often. Like, I think the Cyclops scene might be the most violent of the scenes, possibly. But just something interesting I wanted to point out that I noticed. I was like, oh, I probably would have guessed this was PG-13, to be honest with you, with the exception of, like, the Cyclops scene. But yeah, just something interesting. I'm actually talking a lot more about the Odyssey than I thought I was going to. But yeah, like I said, overall, I really enjoyed it. I think it should be shorter. I think it's a bit all over the place sometimes. I think it's a bit longer than it needs to be. But overall, this is still a great experience, especially to see in theaters. So, speaking of, should you see this in theaters? If you are a Christopher Nolan fan, if you are a Norse mythology fan, is that the right one? I'm really bad at that kind of stuff, so I apologize if I said the wrong thing. If you are a fan of the Odyssey book, I think then, or if you just want to have an incredible experience at the theaters, then yes, go see this in the theaters. Go see this on the biggest screen you can, the loudest sound you can. Man, that Dolby was very, very loud. I think this is like the loudest Dolby movie I've seen in a while. But it was kind of awesome because it made our seats shake. It was kind of crazy. But yeah, go see this in theaters. However, I will say, if you had like zero interest in this movie, and or like you're not a Nolan fan, like say you've seen Nolan's movies and you're like, you can't get into Nolan movies, this one won't win you over. So maybe I'll say wait for streaming if you can't like afford it or don't have the time to, because this also is a 3-hour movie, man, or almost technically. So yeah, if you're Nolan fan, Odyssey fan, go see this in the theaters. If not though, then you could probably wait for streaming, or even skip it maybe. But well, I would say wait for streaming. That way, if you can't afford to go see it in theaters, that way you can at least be part of the conversation. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about the Odyssey, I think. But yeah, thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. If you like this video, please hit like. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. I've done a bunch of other reviews. I plan to do more reviews coming up. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you guys next time. Bye.
I think